And then builders, contractors. Great, thank you. I think that kind of helps us get a sense for who's in the room. So yeah, we're here today to kind of go over some of the permitting process and requirements for those of you working on Marshall Fire rebuilding. We have the screen on out in the lobby. If you want to spread out a little bit, you can. I'm Lisa Ritchie, Fire Recovery and Planning Manager for the Planning and Building Department. Cameron Folks, Assistant City Engineer, he has some information to share with you later. And then Chad Root is helping with logistics. He's our Chief Building Official, and he'll have the most information to show today. Pretty much most everything we're going to share with you, other than some of the right-of-way logistics, is on our website. If you haven't found this already, when you're at the city's homepage, you start it here at the top. The fastest way to get to our information, go to the Marshall Fire page, and then here to permit information. And here you'll find a lot of information. The biggest thing our contact information is on here. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions before you get too far down the road and submit a building permit and realize you've had some issues, as well as we're doing appointments with any staff, planning and building staff as well. So Chad, I'm not sure if you want to start from here.
Yeah. So I'm Chad Rue. I'm the building official. Like I said, this is a pretty good meeting. First time without lunch that we've had so many people show up, which is awesome. So kudos to you guys. So yeah, meeting with staff. Excuse me. So if you guys want to set up an appointment to meet with the plans examiners, inspectors, Tuesdays and Thursdays we have time set aside where staff is available to meet with you to go over the project if needed on your part. And it might be a good bet because there's some questions. Even staff's working around as far as, the differences between the energy codes, because there's basically 3 different options right now as far as, hey, you could do the full energy code that's affected by the rest of the city where you have the Appendix RC, where you're basically zero energy. You have the 21 energy code that was adopted by the Board of Appeals and by City Council, which is different than the 2021 IECC. There's some confusion on that. So it's close enough to the 2018 Louisville Prescriptive Energy Code. When they talk about the 2018 IECC, it's actually a prescriptive energy code that the board and staff came up with. It was 3 pages, and the idea behind it was to keep it simple as possible for the contractors and also for my inspectors, so it didn't get complicated, right? So you might take a look at that. A lot of the big differences on it between the 18 and the 2021 ICC, as far as adopted by the city and amended, is basically it's still kind of a prescriptive model as far as the R values, meaning that we kept the R60 as required by the IACC, the 2021. So it's R60 in the ceiling, R21 in the walls, R21 in the basement walls, down to crawl space. Under the 2018, it's R49 in the ceiling, R21 in the walls, and R19 in the basement. So you might take a look at that if you're building to make sure that, hey, if you do go with the 2021 IACC, then there's some eligibility for Excel credits and rebates, right? So if you don't use the 2021, you don't get those rebates. But there's such a close comparison, it might be something to take a look at as the city's adopted. So keep in mind, the 2018 IECC is not what you see in the book. It's basically a prescriptive code that the city's adopted before, and the 2021 IECC is not what's in the energy code, it's what the city's adopted. Unless you go with what the city originally adopted with the Appendix RC. So there's 3 options.
One quick note on that too, Chad. For any of you who are working with homeowners that buy a lot that weren't the owner as of the time of the fire, they are required to do the full net zero energy code. So it's only the original owner at the time of the fire that's eligible to opt down.
Yep. So, let's see. What else did you want to talk about?
Yeah, I can
I thought I'd just kind of skip around and.
Sure. I'll start with some of the zoning requirements and the recovery variance information. So part of your building permit, you'll need to make sure that you're compliant with zoning for the neighborhoods. Just know that each neighborhood has a PUD. They're all a little bit different. So we don't have, the zoning standards are going to vary around town. So make sure you are familiar and check those out. If you go here on the zoning standards, for each of the affected neighborhoods, we have a summary handout. So you can find those here. If you have any questions on that, let us know. As part of these fire rebuilds, because so many of these homes were built out of conformance with kind of what these standards are or how we interpret them today, we're offering what we call a 10% recovery variance for any of the measurable standards. So front setback, rear setback, height, things like that. There's not a lot of criteria around that. We'll probably follow up with some questions. I think we're really encouraging no side setback on that internal 5-foot setback. We'd really not prefer to see a recovery variance on that 5-foot side setback, just you're triggering fire codes and getting close to your neighbors. But really, we're pretty open on the rest of them. As soon as you've identified the need for a variance, we have a form on our website. And you just go in here, fill it out. Really basic information, site plan, kind of your narrative and rationale. We're reviewing these. It's taken about a week or two for us to get these back out the door. Sometimes we might have some questions, so let us know on that if you have any questions on that. Do you want to talk about lot grading, or do you?
Yeah, go utilities lot grading.
Yep, okay.
Hey everyone, Cameron Folks, Assistant City Engineer, Public Works. We'll go over some of the utility stuff and lot grading now. So let's start with water meters. Water meters are in the basements in all these homes, so we're gonna require you guys to move those back outside per current standards. So you put those just downstream of the curb stop. The city will be supplying new curb stop boxes, valve boxes for any curb stops that are in driveways. And then we'll also be supplying the water meter pit, the water meter setter, and the water meter itself. So and that includes the frame and the cover and everything. So the only thing the contractor will be supplying will be copper piping, and then the supports for. You get a little closer to the microphone. Sorry, and then supports for the water meter setters or the water meter pits. Okay. So, and the new water meter pits will be rated for driveways. So they'll be rated for traffic. They'll be set up good. On sewer services, those have been capped, as well as the water services during the demo. Those are going to be required to be cameraed before you make the connection. So that Chad will be dealing with that. You'll also be required to install a two-way clean out on the property. The time of inspection at the cap is when you'll give the video report to the building department. Some of these subdivisions have a gravity underdrain, and those will also need to be cambered if you're planning on using those gravity underdrains as well, so similar to the sewer service. We have a website set up for lot grading as well as the underdrain information, and so that is, let's see, Public Works, thanks. So that's on under Public Works information for rebuilding here. We'll go to the map here. This also gives you details for your lot grading type. So whether you have a type A lot or a type BGW, there's details for that, but we'll go to the map where you can go find your lot or whatever lots you guys are working on. And we'll just go in here and pick one of these lots. And so this tells you what the lot grading type is. It also tells you, it gives you the detail for lot grading type A. So we'll click on that. Shows you the standard type A lot grading detail. I will say that the lot A's were typically not graded properly back in the 90s when these were built. So we're gonna pay particular close attention to the type A lots to make sure these backyard swales are included with the rebuild. You can also get the as-built information by clicking here for the subdivision. So we have the original as-builts and or construction plans that were used to construct the subdivision. So you can find out locations of water services if you don't know them, or sewer, but you should be able to have that information out in the field as well. So fixture count form, let's go back here to the website, that's also here. Here's the fixture count form. Basically, for anyone that has an existing 3/4 inch tap, if you are 29 water supply fixture counts or less, you will not be charged a fee. If you go over, so if you decide to build bigger and I want 7 bathrooms in my house and your fixture count unit is over 30, you're gonna have to pay an expansion fee to go to a 1 inch, okay? That current cost is $41,800 to go from a 3/4 to a 1, okay? So something to be looking out for there. If you do choose to install fire sprinklers, you will get a free upsize to a 1 inch, provided your fixture counts are 29 or less. Again, if your fixture counts are 30 or more and you have a fire sprinkler, you will have to pay that expansion fee, okay? And so I think there's some FAQs on the website as well here with the fixture count form and kind of how to fill it out. It kind of goes over everything I talked about here. Here's that amount for the expansion fee, and then gives you some guidance on kitchen groups, bath groups, other stuff like that to make sure you guys are filling out the form correctly. Okay. So you'll call at the time you get your building permit to kind of set up when you get your pits and everything. Then you'll get everything plumbed, and then once you're ready for the meter, you'll call, and then they'll bring out the meter and set it.
So it's temporary water for construction?
Not temporary water, no, for construction. This is for the house. Temporary water meters are fire hydrant meters. We have those out at our operations. And for rent, we've been running low just because there's so many contractors in town. So we also have a fill station out at our operations division, 104th and Dillon, that you can just take your trailer or your water truck out there, fill, and basically pay as you go. So you don't have to have a hydrant meter.
So it will be on temporary water construction?
Only if you have the water meter set. For water for construction, you need to have a fire hydrant meter, which is like a 2-inch meter you get from our operations division. Okay? Is that?
You can only get that after permits issued, or?
You can go get that anytime. So right now, we're currently out of meters just because all the demolition and construction in town. But again, you can fill your tanks at operations for and just pay for the water fee. So go ahead. No, you have to get those from us. Go ahead. At this time, no. You have to design your system from basically the curb stop to the home. So you don't have to go to 1 inch unless you need a 1 inch for losses for your fire sprinklers. That would be on the fire sprinkler system, but typically those would require tanks, is what we've seen kind of in the older parts of town. Other questions on utilities?
Well, one related on submittals for the grading and drainage plans. Are you looking for a diagram, like the diagram you just showed up there? Are you looking?
You want to answer that one?
Yeah, ideally, when the permit plans come in, you'll include the proposed grading. We know the existing grading, is going to be pretty disrupted after debris removal. So when you're measuring your height calculations, you can go from kind of the previous grade that was there. So existing grade isn't the grade after debris removal. It's the grade kind of intended to match the original overlap grading plan for the neighborhoods, which are in there. And then, the best you can show the proposed grade, show the direction of the swale, the slopes, things like that. It doesn't need to be, designed by a civil engineer per se, but a good level of detail on that. Once we have, been working with some of the early architects on getting this shown really clearly, once we have a really, plan that really identifies, how we want to see this, we'll post this out for you all to, take a look to see how the city's expecting to see the grading and drainage plan. That's been the tricky thing so far with the excavation on some of these lots, getting that kind of reestablished clearly.
Yeah, for sure.
Permit requirements, we have a whole section on right-of-way management at the end, but we'll stay on permits for now.
I'll try to use this, see if it works. So
Maybe I'll use the other mic. Little echoing. Okay, so on permit requirements, for residential homes, we are not taking incomplete set of plans. It has to be a complete set of plans, so no deferred submittals on residential homes. And the reason why is we have a goal in-house right now on every residential home that's fire affected to have a turnaround time of 10 to 14 days, okay? That's our internal goal. If you guys, come in and there's a bunch of other homes, it may take a little bit longer, but that's kind of what we're ramped up for, is to get these homes out as fast as we can. In order to do that, we need complete sets of plans, okay? Because you think about it, if there's an incomplete set of plans or deferred submittals, it kind of hangs out, then other plans come in, and it's not streamlined. It's not like McDonald's, okay, where you go through and it's kind of cookie cutter. So that's kind of the key, is when you do submit a set of plans, make sure it's complete. And just go through that checklist. I know the checklist is pretty huge, and you're like, what the heck is this on some of it? But trust me, there's a reason behind a lot of it, is we just want to make sure that we don't have to send it back out to you or call you up because it's missing that document. Because if it's missing that document, it goes back to the start, and then whatever else comes in, we do that first, and then when it gets back down to it, so it'll take a lot longer to process your plans, okay? So I think that's the key thing. And then make sure you get your mine hazard map in, okay? A lot of people are like, what the heck's that? It's more than anything, it's kind of owner beware, that you're building, or you could possibly be building above some mine hazards. Unless you guys want to throw, or the owners want to throw $800,000 to $1 million on a project that's up above a mine and not knowing that there could be any subsidence issues, right? That's a problem. That's a problem for you guys as a contractor. That's a problem for us. If there's any problems, it's just kind of owner beware that, hey, you might be above, an old coal mine that's 200 feet down to 100 feet down. And there's, on the mine hazard map, it kind of shows, how deep the veins are of the coal and what type of hazards you guys might be up against, or the owners are up against on that. So make sure that you include that with your set of plans. And then what we're looking at is just, hey, the engineer or the geotech report shows that, hey, they designed the home with those hazards in mind, and that's kind of where we leave it. It's kind of an owner beware. Hey, the engineer and the geotech acknowledge that there's some mines in the area, and that's kind of the big ticket item on that. And so far, that seems like what a lot of people leave off, and they don't realize that there are mine hazards in the area. If you guys are doing sprinklers, that's probably one, since it's not required, that, hey, if you wanted to do a deferred submittal on, we would allow the sprinklers to be deferred at a different time. And like Cameron said, if you do sprinklers, you do get an upsize on the meter for free from the city on the pit. And as Cameron mentioned before, a lot of the meter pits were in the homes that burned, and so the meters were. So there's meter pits on the outside. We're requiring meter pits to be on the outside, so it's they can be read easier. On the sewer lines, we are requiring them to be scoped, a two-way clean out between the house and the trunk line. It just keeps it cleaner than pulling out an appliance in the basement and trying to get a clog out of the basement. Just it gets a little messy on that end. Let me see. I'm trying to think of
Maybe master permits?
master
And
permits.
Apply all online?
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you gonna talk about the, between the permitting and the debris removal to the starting of the build? Isn't there a window of time that they're not gonna build?
Yeah,
There's some
we can.
additional that needs to be applied.
So yeah, we can definitely talk about that. Well, So what we're looking at is from the time that say that you get the lot cleaned up, and there's still what we consider an open pit or a crevice that's been, so you have kind of an option. You have, if you pulled the permit and you're ready to go and the site's not cleaned up yet, you don't have to do the hydromulch or the seed as long as the permit's ready to go and you're going to start building on it. Okay, that's the big thing. It's just we're trying to keep the dust from blowing around when we have the windstorms. And there are some contractors out there that are actually doing the demolition of the foundations, and they are leaving the caissons exposed just for future build, and actually an open, kind of more of an open pit, because they're planning on, hey, I don't want dirt back down in there because we just have to move it back out, and where are we going to place it? Because staging is going to be really tight on a lot of these subdivisions once a lot of building starts taking place. So they're actually just leaving it cut and then putting a 4-foot fence around. Basically, it's a safety fence. And so you have 180 days, under the building code, it's 180 days that you have to do something with this, okay? So from when the debris is removed from the lot, and that you have, basically we call it a conditional final. You have 180 days to get plans in, to start building. We can, give another extension to that of 180 days, such as if there's some supply issues or just the demand with contractors are out there. But that's basically, if you did that, it's about a year that you're looking at that you can get extended to. But what we're looking at is 180 days, there's determination as far as what's to take place. For some of these lots, if they don't build on it within those time, we may have to come in and do a notice for the owner to fill. Just because the people that are building, that are living there, don't want to live next to a crater. Okay, did that answer your question? Any other questions?
Yeah, if there's no mine-related stuff within like 200 feet of the lot, I think it said you just submit, like showing that there's nothing there.
Yeah, just show on that mine hazard map, you'll just put where the house is on the map, and mine hazard's over there. And that's all that we're asking.
And then you said 10 to 14 day permit process, is that from when you receive it or when you guys get to it?
That's from when we receive it. That's our internal goal, okay? Just keep in mind that, hey, if we get a lot of plans coming through, it may take longer, but internally, that's what we put in as far as a department to get these turned around. And our goal too is not like a lot of departments where, hey, we're gonna make notes on these set of plans and then send it back out to the architect or you guys as the contractor to address on the set of plans. We'll give you guys a call and say, hey, we noticed that this is not to whatever, specs. We're going redline it and basically dictate that it shall meet this. Are you okay with that? And what that does is it speeds up the process a lot of times, if there's just some minor things, instead of going back and forth between us and the architects or you and us and the contractor. That takes time because every time it's resubmitted, it's another 10 to 14 days, right? That before we can take a look at it. So in order to move it through the process, we're just going to dictate what items need to be brought up to code the best that we can. If there's a lot of items, then we'll send it back out. But we feel that on some of these smaller ones, we'll just redline it. Yeah.
The permit application, it shows water, sanitary, going out this one, we have to fill those out.
So on water and sanitary, do they fill those out?
Develop a picture form, they submit it.
The picture count form and the water. and
The water's
sewer
your tap fee.
Yeah.
tap.
Fee form? Yep, both forms.
Because I was just confused when doing the fee form, there's not, when we spoke last time, he was mentioning that there wasn't gonna be fees to connect water and sewer in. There's not a way to fill that out without requiring fees. I believe he gives a $39,000 credit for what a single family house is, and then below it's like $53,000, which leaves a $15,000 gap that I have to submit.
Right.
You don't have those fees.
Right. So okay, so you fill out the water fixture form. Only if you have an expansion fee do you fill out the tap calculation form. Does that make sense? Right, so if you're over 30 and you had a 3/4 before, that's when you fill out the water sewer tap calculation form.
So on the permit application, I have to fill that box in, do I just put the tap calculation fee blank in there? If we're not over 30, we don't need it?
I don't know what's on the form for the water tap.
Lists that you gotta attach each document to the checklist.
You know, I think right now you're right. I think we have that set to a required field, so we can put some notes in there and make that optional if this is, yeah.
That answer your question? Okay, sounds good, yeah. Kind of. So it's based off a valuation, okay? So, yeah, it's kind of a calculation that it's been set up by the ICC and taken over, or basically originally developed by the Uniform Building Code on that. So we have an example, I think, of a $700,000 home. And that's the valuation of $700,000. Okay, that valuation comes into place with materials and labor, is kind of how it's broken down. So basically, profit as far as what you're getting paid, okay, is included in that, because that's what you're charging the homeowner, you know, is that profit. So that's kind of how it's set up, is the total valuation of the project includes your fees as the contractor. Yep. So,
Will you be doing those calculations, or are you asking the contractor to do these evaluations?
the contractor does evaluations. The only time that we take a look at it and may ask for a contract if it comes in extremely low, okay? That's where we kind of leave it at that point. So if it comes in low, we're like, okay, how can he build for this? He's God's gift to Louisville, you know? So, yeah.
Is there a reconciliation required at the end?
There is not. Yeah, unless it comes in low. Then we'll be talking with you. Yep. Then we'll be talking to you. Yeah, what's your name, where do you live? Yeah.
Is there an update on use tax waiver?
I do not know on that one, Lisa, you know?
You know, it came up a little bit last night at City Council, and as you all know, none of us in the room have the ability to waive or reduce or change any of those fees. Their city attorney is looking at the restrictions within the use tax structure and what's potentially eligible for kind of how we would rebate. And it may get on a city council agenda sometime at this point, but we don't have any direction to change any of that.
Assuming there's no weather development fees, right?
So there's maybe a small likelihood that some of these homes will have impact fees. Impact fees only apply on an increment if the original home was pretty small. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. So we have some description on here. We'll check that when your permit comes in, and it could come up on a handful of homes, but for the most part, what you see on this page should be everything that applies.
And you use the assessor's data for existing
We will use kind of any best available data. So if we have permit data, if we have assessor data, we'll use kind of any source we can to validate the previous home size that was legal.
I saw another, yep.
No tax reconciliation,
No tax recs.
permit reconciliation for the fees.
At this point, there's not. Yeah. Yeah, we don't, unfortunately, we don't have that ability. When the fires first came through, we worked on doing a no fee for demolition permits, just because we felt that was the right thing to do. And we got our hands slapped on that because we don't have the authority to reduce fees or change fees. So, yeah.
We want to talk about right-of-way permit or right-of-way management?
Oh, yeah, let's, Cameron will talk about right-of-way.
Can you pull up that?
Yeah, I need to find it here. Go ahead and start, and then I'm going to pull up the
I
diagram.
mainly need it for the diagram.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over right-of-way conditions. As you guys know, there'll probably be a lot of construction going on, so we have come up with right-of-way conditions. So you'll get a right-of-way permit with your building permit, so they'll be combined. You won't have to come in and get a separate one, so that will be nice. Basically, storage of loose materials won't be permitted in the right-of-way, so rock or anything like that. Let's see, going over a couple other things here. So trespassing, similar to the demolition, we don't want people trespassing onto other people's property without permission, so you'll need a trespass agreement if you want to access your property during construction, the adjacent property owners, okay? So one other thing is that you cannot access or store material on any city-owned property. That does not include the right-of-way, but that does include things like open space, parks, outlots, stuff like that. You cannot access the properties from those areas, okay? So some of the lots back to open space, stuff like that, you can't drive around the back and access it from that point or store materials back there. Let's see, so bulk water, we talked about that a little bit, but I'll say it again. We have fire hydrant meters out at our operations division, 104th and Dillon. We're running low. Sometimes they come in and they go out pretty fast. You also have the option of bringing your truck or trailer out there and they will fill it, and you just pay as you go. You won't have to pay the deposit fee for the meter. So that's one kind of nice option. Lisa's working on that. So basically, we're gonna install striping here shortly in all the burned areas. So we're gonna stripe out basically 8 feet on both sides of the road. And the 20 feet in the middle will need to be clear to keep emergency access going. So you guys will be able to use the area in front of the property that you're working on. So in this diagram here, the red area is your property. And then you can also use the right-of-way on adjacent homes, provided 2 things. The demolition is complete on that property, and there's no building permit for that property been submitted.
And nobody lives there.
And what?
Nobody lives there.
And also, nobody lives there. So if there's a standing home next to a demolished home, you won't be able to use that right-of-way for that. So we're gonna stripe the area that you guys can use for storage. You can put dumpsters there. You cannot put loose material in that area. One note on that is that we are having to flush the fire hydrants in the burned areas because no one's using the water. So to keep that water, the chlorine residual up in the water system, we have to flush those. So anything you do put in the gutter line will get wet. So, question.
How does this look in a cul-de-sac?
Cul-de-sacs are very tricky. So we're not striping cul-de-sacs. And so
We just always park straight in.
right. So we're not gonna we'll have to deal with these on a case-by-case basis. Things get busy. We are looking at some other options for off-site parking or other areas, and maybe Lisa can jump in on that.
So we have some commitments from some of our local businesses in Centennial Valley to potentially allow contractor parking if and when it starts to get crowded out there. We aren't gonna, we'll get that information to you as we need, but I would say for now, just really try and be nice and respectful to one another out there. If you're doing work where there's residences, still occupied, don't park in front of driveways, make sure that you all are keeping your job sites clean, and then just play nice and fair. We have extra consultant staff that we have that is going to be kind of acting as referees out there. So we've hired OTAC Consulting on behalf of the city, and they'll be doing extra inspection and right-of-way enforcement.
So one of the conditions too is that we do reserve the right to provide notice to remove anything from the right-of-way. So kind of like Lisa said, if things get really busy out there, we may go out and say, hey, you guys need to move this stuff or whatever. Obviously, the first option and the preferred option is, do you guys store material and everything on the property? We understand it's going to get busy, but for now, we're allowing use of the right-of-way. Again, there'll be stripes on both sides of the road that'll be able to kind of delineate the areas you'll be able to use. Okay? Nope, so you'll get a right-of-way permit with your building permit. And so that's what this will allow. And basically, that fee is included in your building permit fee. So you're getting a building permit / right-of-way permit when you get it, so you don't have to get a separate one.
I heard rumors of potential city management programs to regulate parking and basically kind of mandate, buses or carpooling on site. It sounds like you guys
And that's what we're currently working on with some other.
back away from it and just let us figure it out and get something.
We're gonna start by letting you all figure it out, and I think as it gets busier out there, then we'll have to partner together on different ways to keep you guys moving and get residents back home.
And again, we'll have people on site at least 2 times a day, probably up to 3 times a day, monitoring the situations. If things are getting busy, they may work with you, say, hey, move this equipment, move this, move that. So that's kind of the first way we're going about it, and then we're coming up with plan B if things kind of get really, really busy. So.
If you know you're gonna have like a concrete truck or something that's gonna block that 20-foot area, we have a phone number in these right-of-way permit conditions. You give them a call and a heads up. Just, hey, FYI, I'm gonna be blocking it for this time. So it doesn't necessarily require a separate right-of-way permit, but just we do want a heads up on some of that stuff. And then if any damages to the right-of-way, any work that is occurring in right-of-way that's outside of what you're allowed in the permit conditions that we issue, you will need a separate right-of-way permit with Public Works.
Right, so,
have to call in lumber deliveries too?
say that again?
Do we have to call in for lumber deliveries?
For lumber, no, temporary deliveries should be fine. So if you're just parking there for a minute, unloading the lumber or anything like that, you should be fine. The bigger things are, and you'll see in the conditions, concrete trucks, concrete pumps, any damages to the right-of-way, you guys are responsible for. So just like anything else, any other right-of-way permit. So it's similar to the right-of-way permit, but reminder on work hours, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays and 8 to 7 on the weekends?
8 to 7 on the weekends.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Does the city have a reference on dumpsters? We're not gonna build it as a 30-yard or 20-yard or 8-yard or what?
So you can use the 8 feet in front of the lot for that storage. You won't be able to go into that 20 feet that we're striping out, right? So you can use that 8 feet in front of the lot for dumpsters or anything else. But again, they tend to, break up concrete. They tend to ruin asphalt. So just keep that in mind. We prefer those be put on the lot, just to minimize damages and restoration for you guys. So.
One thing to maybe consider is if the homeowner you're working on their house knows the neighbor next door and they're not building for a while, is get an agreement to use that lot for staging of materials. Because staging's going to be pretty tough, as far as materials. You got the lumber package coming in, and just with commodities and getting the products that you need, you can't be choosy in when you get it, right? It's the real world that we live in. So, hey, it's showing up today. We don't have any room at the lumber yard. We need to drop it off. Staging's going to be huge. So we'll probably work with, the homeowner, if they know somebody that's not building right away or they're a ways down, to get it set up and just get an agreement with them.
Do we have an estimated time for like Coal Creek, when power will be restored? We're talking a lot of generators.
Right. So we're working with the utility companies right now. They want things mostly clear before they go back in. They're going to have to retrench basically electric, gas, and the CenturyLink and Comcast. I think they're going to retrench everything. And so in order to do that, they want the areas clear or mostly clear.
We're starting to build and we have materials and they want to come in.
It's part of that's part of the management with OTAC, and then also assume you need temporary power for these early rebuilds. There's not gonna be
Right.
power out there.
Yeah, so they'll just have to coordinate with you, or you'll have to coordinate with them, or you'll have to coordinate together to get things across the lot and then to go through temporary power or whatever you guys need. So last thing is that if you do cause damages to the right-of-way, in order to do that repair, you're going to have to come in and get a separate permit because you'll have to give us concrete mix designs, asphalt mix designs, and any traffic control that's going to be required on that. Okay. Other questions on right-of-way conditions? Go ahead. So stormwater management, you guys will be required to do the management on your lot. You'll get details with that. It's basically the same details that we provided on the demolition, so having either silt fence or wattles around the property. Inlet protection is currently being managed by the city, but if we see anything coming off of a certain lot, our stormwater person will come up and say, hey, stop putting things in the right of way. Justin?
Are you doing a pre-con walk to check the right of way?
Yeah, so that's a good point. We are, with each permit, requiring a pre-construction. It's gonna be a little different than we did with the demolitions. We're just gonna have like a session, kind of like now, where people will come in, you'll have to sign up at the door that says you've taken the session, and then you'll have to do that before you get your building permit, right-of-way permit. So, go on.
And then what about the concrete cleanouts?
Oh, the concrete cleanouts, we have those echo pans or equals. You'll have to use those. So kind of the above grade metal or anything like that. Another question I thought I saw? No?
You didn't go through this a little bit, but you're talking about the stop boxes being the driveways, and then the water meter pits will be off so they can draw center and be offset?
They can be in the driveways. So the meter pits that we're speccing can be, they're traffic rated, so we understand that at least probably 50% of the homes had curb stops in the driveways, which leads towards meter pits being in the driveways. So with the details you'll get, again, we're supplying new curb stop boxes, the new top for the curb stop boxes for driveways, and then the meter pits and the setters, and that's all driveway rated. So they'll be set up. Some people have asked, can I move my driveway? My curb stop is currently in landscaping, and where I move my driveway, the curb stop will be in the driveway. We are allowing that. So. Or- Go ahead. Oh.
About your energy compliance tiers. So we're doing a passive house, certified passive house. I'm wondering if there's anything in particular we should make you aware of or we should be aware of for the permitting process. A couple of the line items on your checklist are a little bit irrelevant for redundancy. So we're thinking of that passive house compliance documentation, PERS report, and that sort of thing. Shall we do that anyway, or just is there anything we should be aware of?
So you're going to follow the 2021 IECC without Appendix RC, correct?
Yes, although some of the things are just different, so I think, for
Yep.
example, the R60 prescription requirement for the roofs will be R59, because we're using the prefab panel.
Yep.
So I don't know if that, we can check that we're following.
Yeah, you can, basically when it's done by a HERS rater and through that process, it's it's like an engineered system. It's a system that complies with, they have the program that it complies with. So you'll be fine. You can basically, next to that, just write NA comply, HERS rater on that, so.
And we should go ahead and do a PERS report.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, so that's what we'll look at on these. We've had a couple that have come through that are HERS rated, and we take a look at the HERS report at first, because it won't comply with a lot of the codes if they're going HERS, right? So we'll take a look at the HERS portion of it to see that, hey, it's already been rated, and then we don't have to take a look at that portion of it, so.
And then likewise with the manuals, JBS.
Yep.
It's kind of a different system than our passive house documentation would, but do we need to submit that?
Yeah, you'll still need to submit that with the home, just kind of show that it's in compliance. And then how it interacts with the HERS is what we'll take a look at. Does that make sense? Okay, sounds good.
On that same line.
Yeah.
You guys don't have anything to do with the Excel incentives in terms of, they don't need anything from you or?
Lisa writes the check.
Yeah.
No,
Come
we
to
don't.
me. No, we haven't heard the final kind of process that Excel is going to put out on how to get the rebates, but they will be there, and I'm not sure if they're going to go through the builders, if they're going to the homeowners, so stay tuned on that. They're still working out the details of the program.
So they did the 18, but they did net zero, can they get the
From my understanding, if you did the 18, you cannot.
That's my understanding as well, but if they opt up to some of the higher ones, I would say rebuildingbetter.org, the county is managing all of the messaging around all these programs, so really, it's rebuildingbetter.org is the resource that all three jurisdictions are trying to funnel any of the rebates, any of the incentives, and any of the discounts and messaging, so they're intended to be that best resource for you. Any questions?
Oh, no, I think master plans.
Oh, yeah.
How many are doing master plans? Awesome. You'll be in for a treat. So what we're taking a look at on the master plans is just make sure that whatever series of plans or options that are on there are on that plan. And if you end up, if you end up having a basement that's finished on one and not finished on the other, then the main thing is that's going to be a kind of a separate plan because the valuation's different on it. On the master plans, make sure you don't include decks or pergolas at this point. That can be a separate permit, because what we want to do is make sure that we're taking a look at the house itself, at the footprint, because you guys are going to be moving it around on different lots, that same configuration. And if there's a deck or pergola on there, then it may not work on that as far as setbacks and requirements, okay? So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the master plans, you know. There's been a couple people that were doing master plans that they decided, hey, we'll just kind of submit this plan at first because this is one that's being used. And then you guys will review it. And if we know that, hey, that may be part of a master plan, again, we'll just stamp on that and use that same plan again later on, instead of just reviewing like a set of 16 different master plans, and some might not even be used, right? So there's kind of different options that you can do, and if you're looking at doing that, feel free to give us a call and we'll kind of sit down with you on a Tuesday. Yes.
We already have those in, you want us to pull them out? Decks,
Yeah, if you can just pull them out, that would be great. Yeah, it's just easier to review. So, yeah, that's kind of it on master plans. Trust calcs, you know, they can come in later. We just take a look at it. The big thing for the inspectors is you'll be submitting electronically to us. So the big thing is once we approve it, you'll have our stamps on it. We require a full set of plans and the plans to be in color on site for the inspection team. Since you know, during the COVID time, we really didn't use inspection cards, but because with the amount of trades and different contractors out there, we're going to have inspection cards that are going to be required on the site. That way, the plumber knows that, hey, the insulator passed, or vice versa, you know, and the general contractor, because a lot of times it's a little bit of a confusion when it's all electronic. Just the general contractor knows, but the subs don't know what's going on either. So a full set of plans in color on the site for inspections, and then we'll have the permit inspection card on site. And then what code enforcement and a couple other groups wanted is just you'll get a little piece of paper like you see in some of these burn areas that they're doing cleanup. It's just that permit's on site. That way they know that, hey, you guys are legit on that. Yes, ma'am.
Given supply chain issues, and this is more of an inspection question, will you allow any consideration in terms of inspections for maybe the rough MEPs if insulation, if we don't have windows in, for instance?
Yes. So what we've been doing recently is, because the windows are, there's one manufacturer that's like 9 months out, and they're ready. So we ended up letting the contractor go ahead and side the house, and basically treat those windows like a replacement set of windows. Because it was 9 months out, they were 3 months into the project, they were ready to dry in the home and needed to continue moving forward. So as long as it's has the house wrap over the windows at that point, we'll be fine with it. Yeah, yeah, we're willing to work with you guys on it, knowing that there's supply chain issues and yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of the contractors on site yesterday, could be rumor mill, I don't know, but he talked to me yesterday about saying that, FEMA was gonna be coming in probably next week to start taking the trees out. And what they said to him was, basically, if they take the trees off of the lot, that FEMA will also take that foundation. So basically, the private contractor is not allowed to do the demo on that foundation. You heard anything about that?
I'm gonna let Cameron speak to that since he knows this.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Speaking of the contractors on site, he spoke to a guy at FEMA, and they said they were gonna be coming in, that culvert, they were gonna be coming in, to take trees out there, trees, burn trees, starting next week. What was told to him was that if FEMA comes in, takes the trees off of individual lots, that at that point, FEMA is going to do the demolition of the foundation too, and the private contractor is not allowed to, at the point of when those trees are removed. Have you heard anything about that?
So they have, homeowners will be notified. The time frame now is 5 days prior to them entering the lot to do any work. At that point, the homeowner that's their last opportunity to opt out or to opt back in. So if you've signed up for the FEMA program and they call you 5 days before and you don't tell them that you want to opt out, and then they're going to start working on it, and then that's correct. The private contractor cannot enter. Okay?
Yeah.
Permit application, are you requiring any letters from HOAs?
We are not. Yeah. Yeah, it's best for the homeowner to work with the HOA, but we don't the city does not have any agreements with HOAs that, hey, it has to comply with the HOA before they could submit, like other cities do. We don't have that. Yeah. Any other questions real fast? Okay.
I just want to say that from the builder side, we really appreciate the effort you guys have gone through to come up with this program, to streamline things, to be realistic, to help us get these people back in their houses in a timely manner. So really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yep. On that, the next step is inspection. So when you guys are ready for inspections, just call in or use the portal. I always say call because I'm old school. But use the portal before 4 o'clock the day before, and then we'll be out there the next day. Inspections, you can, during the summer hours, you can see inspections start as early as 6:30 and go till 5. We've hired another inspector. So pretty much, we're a small community department. So there's 3 inspectors that are full-time in the field. We also hired contract inspectors from what used to be Colorado Code, which is now Shooms Coda, and also Charles Abbott to help us out with inspections in order to make sure that there's no delay on that. We ended up hiring another plans examiner to help us out with plan reviews. We also have 5 gig plans examiners. And they range from basically the gig workers have other full-time jobs, or one's retired who used to be the building official over in Lafayette. He's helping us out with plan reviews, and some of them are plan checkers from other cities as well, in order to fast track this. Then if we reach that point, which I call tree line, and we need help because we can't breathe, then we send them out to the code consultants as well, Charles Abbott, Colorado Code or Shooms Coda, for reviews as well on that to keep the process moving. What we try to do is we'll try to keep it in-house with the gig workers and also personnel inside, because if we send it out to Shooms Coda, Colorado Code, or Charles Abbott, they're good at what they do. But that's the problem, is they're good at what they do, and they will mark up the plans And then what we were talking about, they'll send it back out to the architect for corrections, okay? And then there's that back and forth, which takes a little bit of time. So they're kind of our last resort, but just keep that in mind that, hey, if it does go out, that there may be that back and forth on that. Any other questions related to plan reviews or?
Have we got any kind of update, does it know when power is gonna be in the area?
I would plan on using a generator at first. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't confirmed anything with them. I think we're getting probably, my guess is that Enclave and Cornerstone will probably be the two subdivisions that will be cleared first. And that's probably, my guess is when those will probably be the first two subdivisions that get those dry utilities replaced. So, but beyond that, they're just waiting for things to clear. We're meeting with them regularly to kind of come up with a plan, but obviously they don't want to trench through a bunch of driveways if they're going to get removed. So they're just waiting for things to get cleared out so they can go trench the utilities in.
Any other questions? You have a question?
Yeah, resale lots.
Yeah.
You're treating them differently.
Yeah, so the resale lots, again, it needs to be the original owner if you want to opt down on the energy codes. If this is resale, not the original owner, then they have to do the full net zero. Any property that is in the burned area is eligible for the recovery variance, so that's not tied to property owner. And then fire sprinklers going away recently is citywide, so that's the entire city.
What about impact fees?
Impact fees, if they apply, they apply. There's no different standard for impact fees for burn areas or not. So if they get triggered based on the previous size of the home, then they're not waived at this time.
Is turnaround time the same?
Turnaround time the same for,
14 days?
if we get all the information we need, yeah. Yep.
Hey, one other item too, on soils report. These lots are pretty tight. So if there was a neighbor that did a soils report and the adjoining neighbors wanted to use that soils report because these lots are pretty darn tight, I would be okay with that. Who may not be okay with it is the engineer that's doing the work on that home. So you may be up against that, but as far as reducing the cost to the homeowners, on a lot of these lots, it's like, hey, there's a center lot, the two lots on the side and maybe one in the back, they want to use that same report because they're so close. I'm fine with that to help reduce the cost. But your engineer may not be, so just throwing that out there.
Same as soil.
Question in the back?
But,
Some of the soils.
Regarding the
Yep.
resale lots.
Yeah.
Is there like, information online for all of that?
So, yeah, I mean, generally, it's noted wherever applicable. So on the building codes, you'll kind of see some information on that. I can add an FAQ on that. That seems like it'd probably be helpful since it's come up a couple times. Sure.
how many of you guys have large retaining walls on your property that you're rebuilding? Retaining walls. As in over 4 feet. So on retaining walls, basically, they'll need to be engineered if they're holding up a large wall or if there's homes right above it. So yeah, we have some interesting retaining walls that completely burned, their anchors burned too, back into the earth that was holding them up, and they were built by the original developer at the time. And so if you're up against that, it's kind of tough because it affects multiple neighbors, and the neighbors will want to work together as much as they can to either come up with the same design or something that works for everyone. But it will need to be engineered out on those larger walls, just because there's a road or maybe a home right above it that those retaining walls are holding up as well. Yeah, and that's done with the building permit. Yeah. So if this is kind of the cart or the chicken, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So if you're building the house and that retaining wall's not up there in place yet, we can't give a CO because of safety concerns as far as soil sliding down, or if you're up on the hill, that retaining wall needs to be in place before we can give a certificate of occupancy. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. You guys have any?
Any other questions, anyone?
We're just going to open it up for random questions. If you want to throw tomatoes at Cameron, you can. That's fine.
Go ahead.
You mentioned on the recovery variance that it wouldn't apply to the 5-foot side yard setbacks.
We're encouraging not applying for the recovery variance on that 5-foot side unless you really have kind of a unique circumstance that's giving you a constraint. It triggers additional building codes and it just, it gets closer to that neighbor in that smallest area.
What about a neighborhood where the PUD is a 7-foot side?
That's a little different. I think we have a little bit more wiggle room on those with the 7-foot. And really, it's 10%, right? So it's pretty minimal, the actual advantage there.
Just real quick, as you guys are leaving, we do have all 3 of our cards are on the little wood table just outside council chambers here. If you guys want to grab any of our information, it's right there.
And just please feel free to reach out with any questions to any of us. Our contact information is all on the webpage for you as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.